Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're focusing in on the debates at the Constitutional Convention, one of our lesson objectives for this unit. So we need to start with, well, what were the debates? What was the controversy? The controversy started even before the convention started. There was a call for delegates from every single state, all 13 states, to come and fix the Articles of Confederation. These delegates met in Philadelphia in May of 1787, and one thing that was apparent was that some people, some big politicians, big name politicians, refused to show up. Like in Virginia, Patrick Henry, who was the governor of the state, also known for his famous saying, "Give me liberty or give me death," refused to show up. Rhode Island refused to send even delegates. They said, "No, we're not even going to be a part of this." So this was controversial even from the start. It started on May 15th, and things progressed. It started fairly well. George Washington, James Madison kind of got the ball rolling. But by June 28th, things were in such a disarray, and there was such contention in the debates that old Ben Franklin actually called for prayers to get help from God to assist them in their task. Yet by September 17, 1787, they were able to walk out of Philadelphia, and Ben Franklin, when asked what kind of government the people would get, Ben Franklin replied, "A republic, if you can keep it." So first things first, before we get to the debates, what did the framers agree on? Well, everybody was in agreement that George Washington, the biggest name, the one famous person that everybody knew, should preside the convention. That means he was the president of the Constitutional Convention. That was pretty easy. Everybody unanimously agreed on that. One thing that's interesting to note is to consider what was his role as president during the convention. James Madison's notes, he took notes on who spoke and what they said. Washington spoke very infrequently. He didn't speak much at all. So that seems to say that really he didn't do all that much. And yet just his mere presence lent a legitimacy to the proceedings. So one thing to consider is what kind of style of leadership did Washington show? The other thing that the framers agreed on was the rule of secrecy. They agreed to keep things a secret, to shut the windows and not let any outside influence in. The idea is this, that in order for there to be really true freedom of speech, to let people freely talk and share their opinions, they needed to keep secrets. And this is something you think about. It's true between friends. You're more liable to tell a person somebody if you trust them because you know they can keep your secrets. The other thing they agreed on, which was obvious, that the Articles of Confederation just could not be fixed. That there was really no sense in trying to fix them. We needed a brand new government. And therefore a stronger central government was necessary. Pretty easy. All right, that should be it, right? They should go home. Yeah, not quite. Not when you get to the nitty-gritty. So three big debates. Again, they're smaller debates, but you can put them into these three categories. The big debates centered around, one, the structure of government, two, the powers of government, and three, the big elephant in the room that really nobody wanted to talk about, nobody wanted to mention, but was always there, just lurking in the background, slavery. James Madison was the man with the plan. He showed up to Philadelphia early, and he had his plan set. He had a good idea after long study of the problems of the Articles and studying other constitutions from around the world. He came up with a plan. It was known as the Virginia Plan because he made it up, and his friend Edmund Randolph, a delegate from Virginia, presented it to the convention. The Virginia Plan gave most of the power to the national legislature, which would be bicameral. The lower house of the national legislature would be directly elected by the people with proportional representation, meaning that each state would get a number of representatives based on the population, which, if you look at it from the low road point of view, this benefits Madison and his state, Virginia, the most populous state in the Union at the time. The high road, though, Madison is trying to say that, look, democracy matters. that, yes, Virginia should get more votes, and that is fair because Virginia has more people. In this Congress, like I said, the lower house of the legislature would be elected by the people. The upper house would be elected by the lower house. There would be a national executive, and this national executive would be elected by Congress, by the legislature. And you would also have a third branch, a judicial branch. You would also have this thing that he called the Council of Revision, which was made up of members of the executive branch with the judicial branch that would review any laws passed by Congress and could veto those laws. Furthermore, in the Virginia plan, if you notice, where's the role of the states in this plan? He didn't give them a role. He excluded the state governments completely because he noted that that was where the problem was. The problem in the articles was the states had too much power, that it was a confederation where all the power lay in the states. So to solve the problems, he said, you know what, we need to exclude the state governments because that's where tyranny of the majority is happening. So his solution to this whole tyranny of the majority problem is to make a big republic. Instead of a bunch of small republics living together, let's make one big republic. And that way you won't have tyranny of the majority because you'll have different divisions of people from all over the country, and there's no way that people can form majorities in such a big nation, form majorities that can trample on the rights of the minority. So that's the solution to the problem of tyranny of the majority, is instead of a small republic, let's make a big republic. So in essence, it's diversity. Of course, small states dislike this plan for obvious reasons, because it's the big states that would get all the power in this. So the small states banded together and they made their own plan. At least that's the low road point of view, that it was just a debate about power, that the small states were afraid of their power get taken away. But look at the high road. There is a principled debate or a principled critique of this. What kind of government do we want? Do we want one big republic for everybody, or is it better to have smaller governments, to have smaller governments based on locality? That's the idea behind the New Jersey plan, saying like, wait, yeah, we want a small central government or a strong central government, but the state governments matter. The state governments have a say, and they're important because they know their people more. The people are more in touch with the state governments than they would be with some national government. So the New Jersey plan did take into consideration, yeah, we need a stronger central government, we need 3 branches of government, but other than that, it followed the idea of the Articles of Confederation. The Congress, the national legislature, would have equal representation, where each state would only get 1 vote, or would get an equal amount of votes. So you have these 2 plans duking it out. James Madison on one side, and the New Jersey plan on the other. How did they solve the problem? That's what you have to find out. The second big debate at the Constitutional Convention was over the powers of government, and specifically the powers of Congress. Originally, in his first Virginia plan, James Madison stated that Congress should have the power to make laws in areas where the states are incompetent, meaning in areas where states really had no way to function properly, like, for instance, to make treaties with other nations, things like that, to regulate trade. By the time you get down to the end of the Constitutional Convention, there was a pretty good list of the stuff that Congress can do. For instance, to tax, well, duh. To maintain a military to protect people, well, duh. But they realized, wait, we can't list everything Congress does because what if something pops up later on in the future that we don't know about? So what was created was this thing called the Necessary and Proper Clause, which is, some call it the Elastic Clause. The Necessary and Proper Clause gives Congress the power to make any laws that are necessary and proper to execute the foregoing powers listed in the Constitution, which is going to cause huge debates later and even today. But the big idea of all this is that written powers are limited powers. If you write them down, you're in essence limiting the powers that they have to that list. But again, there were some debates at the convention. Like, for instance, what about trading? Should Congress have the power to regulate trade? And that touches the big nerve in in the convention the big elephant in the room, which is slavery, the trade issue. The southern states were worried about the future of slavery, and that was charged all throughout the convention. The trade issue, the southern states were concerned that if Congress got the power to regulate trade, it could vote to end the slave trade. That's something the southern states really didn't want. So how would they solve for that issue? Furthermore, with the Virginia plan, if the states with more population get more delegates, and more delegates to the National Congress really means more power, then wouldn't that benefit states even more to have slaves? Because wouldn't you count them as people? And if slaves are people, then again, you're giving them some type of power. You're almost legitimizing slavery. So how in the world are we going to do this? How are we going to have proportional representation and count the slave population? Obviously, the North said, no way. The South said, yeah, we want to count our slaves. So how do we solve this issue? These issues were solved through compromise. And I Googled it, and Google, almighty Google, says that a compromise is an agreement or settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. Merriam-Webster says this: it's a way of reaching agreement in which each person or group gives up something that was wanted in order to end an argument or dispute. I prefer Mr. Mendez's definition, which is a compromise is an agreement that no one likes, but everyone can live with. So your goal, now that you know what the big debates are, your goal is to find out how these debates were resolved. What were the compromises that solved each debate?